What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Living Mad channel, where I talk to you all about how I live the American dream. So today I want to talk to you about parenting as a distant parent. For those of you who've been watching, or if you don't know, I'm in the Marine Corps. I've been in the Marine Corps for 22 years in March. I had my son when I was in the Marine Corps for about 4 years. He's 17, he'll be 18 this year. And I divorced, 8 years ago now about? So I would say I have a little bit of experience on what it's like to be a faraway parent, because my son does live with his mom. Now, first I want to tell you a couple of the challenges, and then I want to give you a couple tips of things that I've picked up along the way. So the first one is different rules between the households. My son's mother, is a great mother, but there are some things that we do differently between her house and my house. So when he comes to stay with me, there's sometimes expectations that I have of him that maybe he's not used to, that he doesn't agree with, because it's not things that he does at home. Now, I will say for the most part, her and I are pretty aligned on this, so it's not a huge difference. But if you and your significant other are not in sync with a lot of these things, that can cause a lot of issues. Like I said, fortunately for me, we're pretty close, so it hasn't been a huge deal breaker. It hasn't caused too many problems between us. But there have been times where my son and I have talked about some of those things. Another thing that's difficult is sometimes when my son comes to stay with me, he doesn't think of my house as his home. He thinks of his house with his mother as his home, because that's where he spends 90% of his time. He only comes and stays with me on weekends, holidays, summer vacations, things like that. Especially now that I'm closer to him, we spend a lot more time together. But it's still not the same as where he is most of the time, where the neighborhood where he goes to school. So for him, it kind of feels like your home. You know, he has a habit of saying your home, your house, not our home or house. So that's something that's a little bit difficult. And as the parent, you know, it kind of hits hard, because you want your child to think of it as our home, like this is your home too. But they don't necessarily see it that way. So it's sometimes hard to bridge that gap. Another thing that I've noticed, and it's really hard, I don't know that everybody's like this. I'm just telling you some of the challenges for me, right? So when my ex and I split up, my son and I had a very close relationship. However, like I said, this was about 8 years ago. So he was 9 years old. We were super tight. We would go and have daddy Sundays, do hikes together, runs together. He rode bike with me. I mean, we did a lot of stuff together. I coached him in about 3 or 4 different sports. Now, as time has passed, he's changed a lot. And things that he used to enjoy doing with me, he doesn't necessarily enjoy doing anymore. Now that he's a teenager, junior in high school, he wants to spend a lot of time on his own, maybe with his friends, things like that. So it's been a lot harder to maintain that tight-knit relationship that we once had. Now, fortunately, I don't feel like we've completely grown apart. But me, personally, I feel like it's not as tight as it once was. Now, I know it ebbs and flows. I've talked to parents whose children live with them full-time, and they have some of the same struggles. Even my son's mom tells me sometimes, you know, he spends a lot of time in his room. It's not the same thing. So I know that it's not just a distant parent thing. I know that it just happens with children, especially when they're teenagers. But I do have to, or I feel at least, like being a distant parent makes it a little bit harder to maintain those relationships. Another thing is that children want space, especially when they get in these teenage years. They want that space. And because I don't see him often, it's hard for me to want to give him that space. I want to call him. I want to talk to him. I want to FaceTime him. I want to be able to pick him up, take him to the zoo, go to the park, go see movies. But he doesn't always want to do that. Another thing that's difficult is if you or your significant other start forming another family, right? Remarry, or maybe you don't marry, but you have somebody living with you. Maybe the child doesn't feel like they're a part of that family, especially if that family is being formed outside of the home where he lives full-time or most of the time. He or she, your child can feel a little bit left out, like they're not part of this new family. And so that's a huge challenge. And then another thing that for me has been extremely difficult is that he doesn't always want to visit. Now, hopefully, if you're a distant parent, you won't have this problem. But again, I've talked to other parents, especially in the military. A lot of us end up as the faraway parent because we don't want to be moving our children around. It is difficult being a single parent in the military. People do it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult. So I've talked to many people, and that's something that I know a lot of us face or deal with or struggle with is that our children don't always want to visit. They don't always want to travel, 6 hours by car to come see us, or have to fly 10 hours to go to a different country and see us. Especially like summer vacation, when they're older, they want to spend that summer with their friends. They want to be able to go out and do all these things during their summer break. They don't necessarily want to be somewhere where they don't know anybody, just to be with you. Now, fortunately, hopefully, if you are a distant parent, you're able to build a community for your child. So when they come stay with you, they feel like that sense of home, that sense of community, and they want to go there. But if you can't, that's definitely a struggle. So like I said, I only wanted to give you a couple challenges. I don't know how many I gave you, 5, 6 different challenges. I could go on and on about how many things I've struggled with as a distant parent. It is by far one of the hardest things I've done in my entire life. Career-wise, personal, anything. Being a faraway parent is hard. So now I want to give you a couple tips of things that have worked for me, maybe that I do, and maybe you can utilize in your life to try to make things a little bit better. So the first thing is accepting and acknowledging that me as the adult, I am responsible for the relationship. So what do I mean by that? Regardless of how old your child is, whether they're 4, 10, 17 like my son, you as the adult are ultimately responsible for that relationship. You have to do the majority of the work. Now, I do talk to my son, especially now that he's a teenager, and I tell him, hey, this is a two-way street. We both have to put some effort in to maintaining this relationship, because as he gets older, I want him to start taking some responsibility for this relationship that we have. At the same time, I am trying to be the one to lead the way. So I call him, I FaceTime him. I make it known to him and his mother that I'm willing to pick him up anytime they want. If they call me at the last minute and say, hey, he wants to come spend the weekend with you. Right now, fortunately, I'm close enough I can drive. I'll drive the 3 hours it takes, pick him up, and drive right back. I've done it plenty of times. If I'm far away and I have to fly him, I'll buy him the plane ticket. I'll pay for it myself. I'm not going to argue with his mom about who's paying for it. I'm going to pay for it myself. Now, I say that, I realize not everybody can do that, right? But I'm saying in my situation, I will do everything I can to make sure that I can maintain a relationship with my son. Another thing is, and this is really difficult, another thing is trying to connect or show interest in the things that your child is interested in. This is not always easy. Generational gaps, we have different interests. His music tastes are different from my music tastes. His TV and movie tastes are different from my TV and movie tastes. So everything changes, right? Like I said earlier, as you spend time apart, your child's going to grow. They're going to evolve and just develop different interests that maybe weren't the same when you were together. You have to accept that. And if you want to try to maintain the relationship, you have to try to show some interest in the things that they care about to try to build a little bridge between you two. I've already talked about understanding that they change over time. Just accept it. There's nothing you can do to stop it. They're going to become their own person. I think even if they lived with you full time, they're still going to change. Maybe you have a little bit more influence. You probably do have a little bit more influence. But regardless, they're going to change. And you just have to accept that. If you're forming a family away from your child, say you get remarried or whatever the case may be, do everything you can to try to encourage and build and create those family moments, those family memories. You want your child to feel like they're a part of this new family that you're forming. Now, I will tell you from personal experience, I'm going through this and it is extremely difficult. And I'll probably make some more videos about some of that stuff, the whole blended family thing. It's extremely difficult. That doesn't mean I quit. That doesn't mean I give up. I know I've seen other families do it with young kids and teenagers, and it works. And I see the fruits of their labor. I see the benefits of it, which is part of the reason why I try so hard to keep going. But it doesn't always work. So regardless, whether it works or not, as the adult, like I said, you got to take responsibility. You got to try to create those bonds. You got to try to create those memories so that your child feels like they're a part of this new family. And the last thing that I always say, and whenever I talk to anybody about this, is no matter what, you have to continue to show love and unconditional support for your child or children if they're multiple. You cannot just give up because things get hard, because you're depressed, because you miss your child, because maybe they're not calling you or answering your calls. You can't do any of that. It's going to be hard. You're going to face depression. You're going to cry. You're going to have all these emotional roller coasters by being a faraway parent, especially if you're in a job like mine. Well, I can't say especially, but for me in the military, when I deploy, when I get sent to other countries for whatever case may be, or even here in the States, sometimes I get sent somewhere for 2-3 months and I know for those 3 months I can't see my son. It gets extremely difficult. That's hard. That doesn't mean you give up. You have to continue to love and support your child no matter what. All right, guys, hopefully you got something out of this. Like I said, it was just a couple challenges and a couple quick tips. I don't want to make the video too long. But another thing about this is I want to acknowledge the fact that this is difficult, okay? None of us are immune to the hardships of being a faraway parent, of the depression, sadness, and everything that comes with being a faraway parent. So I want to acknowledge that with this video. So hopefully you got something out of this. If you did, hit that like button so the YouTube algorithm pushes it out there. Subscribe if you want to see some more of these videos. And I'll see you next time. Deuces.